Looking at this cookie dough at first, you might think that I'm leading you astray. I am not, okay? Trust the process. It's a cookie, it's not really that big of a deal. The beauty of an icebox cookie dough is that it's supposed to last a while in your fridge or your freezer, so that it gives you the flexibility to pull the dough out, cut it, throw it in the oven, and have fresh, delicious cookies in a matter of minutes. These shortbread cookies are absolutely beautiful. They're crisp, they crumble in the mouth, and they hit the sweet tooth in just the right way. In my stand mixer, I'm gonna combine my butter and my sugar. And so here I have 1 cup of unsalted butter. And to my butter, I'm adding 1/2 cup of granulated sugar and 1/4 cup of light brown sugar. This shortbread doesn't include any dairy, it doesn't include any eggs. The structure of the cookie and almost all of the moisture of the cookie is actually coming from the sugar, which is what makes the cookie really crumbly and crisp when you bite into it. But that means that we need the butter and the sugar to be really well combined. So I'm gonna cream this on medium to medium high for 5 full minutes. It might seem excessive, trust the process, because that gives the sugar plenty of time to dissolve into the butter, and that also gives the sugar plenty of time to incorporate air into the butter, which is gonna be important again for that really crisp, crumbly, light cookie. All right, you can see how light and airy the butter sugar mixture is. And so I'm scraping down the sides of the bowl before I add the vanilla, just so that if any of the butter stuck to the sides of the bowl and didn't get fully incorporated, it will now. While vanilla extract might seem like a mundane ingredient that's in a ton of recipes, in this shortbread, it really works. It contributes most of the flavor that cuts through all of that fat and the deep sweetness from the chocolate. And I promise that's part of what makes this cookie as delicious as it is. I'm now gonna mix the vanilla in for 30 seconds to a minute, just until it's fully incorporated and it's really fluffy again. Before we add our dry ingredients, we need to prep one of our dry ingredients. Here I have 1/3 cup of toasted pecans, and I'm going to very finely chop them. Toasting nuts really allows the flavor of the oils in the nuts to develop and become more present. So it'll add a slight, subtle, rich, nutty edge to our otherwise vanilla sweet chocolate chip shortbread. You might be tempted to stop at this point, but you can see that I've still got some big pieces. So I'm just gonna push all of my chopped pecans into a pile and start chopping again. In order to make sure that everything gets chopped finely, you'll notice that I'm chopping in this one direction, and I'm going to move my knife perpendicular to how I was chopping to then chop in another direction. And this just means that any pieces that might have fallen parallel to my knife beforehand will for sure still get chopped finely. Now that our pecans are chopped, everything here is smooth sailing. To this, I'm going to add 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour and 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. And at this point, it's really important. We're gonna mix this on low just until the flour is combined with the butter. It's going to be a very, very crumbly mixture. It's not really gonna look like your average cookie dough, and that's okay. Okay, I can see that it's really crumbly, but there aren't really big pockets of flour left. Again, I'm gonna scrape down the sides of the bowl. Now we're adding our final 2 ingredients. First and foremost is our mini semi-sweet chocolate chips. It's important to get these really tiny ones. One, because they're absolutely adorable in the cookie, but also, just like the pecans, we don't want big, chunky chocolate chips to get in the way of the cookie dough forming a solid log. And then I'm also going to add my chopped pecans. All right, I'm simply gonna lower my mixer and mix it on low until everything's all combined. Looking at this cookie dough at first, you might think that I'm leading you astray. I am not, okay? Trust the process. This dough is super crumbly. It looks kind of like wet sand. But all of this crumbliness just means that when you bite into the shortbread after it's baked, it's gonna fall apart in your mouth in the best, most gratifying kind of way. So I'm gonna set this aside, and now we need plastic wrap. This step is essentially what makes the Icebox cookie an Icebox cookie, and that's that we're molding it into a cuttable form that can be transferred right to a baking sheet and thrown in the oven. So you need some plastic wrap, and I'm gonna lay down a sizable piece I'm gonna add half of my crumbly cookie dough right on top of my plastic wrap. You might find that it's helpful when you grab the cookie dough to press it together in your hand so that it turns into these loose clumps, just so that the cookie dough doesn't go everywhere on your plastic wrap. Okay, and then the next step, which is included in the recipe, is actually kind of optional. So we're gonna roll this in plastic wrap and then gently roll it against the surface of the table to make a round-ish log. If rolling the cookie dough feels a little too difficult or your cookie dough feels a little too crumbly, feel free to just shape it into a rectangular log and throw it in the fridge. You won't have round cookies, you'll have square or rectangular cookies, but they taste just as nice. I like to think of it this way, like all of the crumbliness that's kind of annoying right now is gonna be really, really, really wonderful when I'm eating the cookie. And I'm just gonna tighten up the edges of the plastic wrap, press it together a little bit more, and pop this in my fridge. And I'm now just gonna repeat that same process with the rest of my cookie dough. I'm gonna pop my second roll of cookie dough in the fridge. These can sit there for a long time. You for sure want them to sit for at least 2 hours, but you can leave them overnight, or you can pop these in the freezer and then when you wanna bake them, throw them in your fridge the day before and they'll be ready to go. I have my chilled cookie dough, a parchment paper lined baking sheet, a cutting board, and a knife. And so now it's time to assemble the cookies. You'll notice that my cookie dough log actually broke while it was in the fridge. That's also okay. That will just be one of the edges of one of my cookies. So here I have the 2 halves of my log, and I'm just gonna slice them, and if some of them are a little misshapen, I might press them so that they make a prettier shape, or I might not, because it's a cookie, it's not really that big of a deal. So we want the cookies to be roughly about 1/2 inch thick. I find that I have the best success with these cookies if I don't saw back and forth. Instead, I just push straight down with my knife. And that makes a nice clean cut and the cookies stay together. As the cookies bake, the butter in them that right now is really firm will soften and hydrate the flour, which is what makes the cookies hold together when they're done baking. You'll notice that they look more like little loaves, but I actually think they're really cute. You know, they're not perfectly circular, they're not perfectly rectangular, but they're gonna be a really, really good shortbread. I have my cookies on my baking sheet, and I just wanna make a quick note that when I was looking at the recipe posted online, I saw that someone left a review saying that they loved the cookie recipe, that it tasted really delicious, and that their cookies weren't perfectly shaped because they couldn't be bothered to shape them perfectly. And I just wanna say that I think that that is the exact right attitude you should have when making Icebox cookies. My oven's preheated to 350 degrees, and these guys are gonna go in for about 14 minutes. They'll be nice and lightly browned on the surface. All right, my cookies are done baking, and I'm gonna set them here to cool down just a bit before I give them a try. It's an ideal shortbread. There's a lot of vanilla flavor present, and then you get the bitter sweetness from the chocolate, but the nuttiness of the pecan and the like beautifully golden bottom of the cookie makes it kind of toasty and delicious. This would be a cookie that I would serve to anyone with some coffee and tea, and I know it would be a hit. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe below so you don't miss any in the future. And if you make these cookies, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.